Court. On my far left, I have Michael Agwanda. He is a governance expert. Gentlemen, it's so good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And we will start with the standard as always. Raila, carry your own graft cross. Let me read to you, our viewers, what he says, and I quote, "Politicians should stop hoodwinking Kenyans with their rhetoric. All those involved in graft must carry their own cross. They should stop bringing in the propaganda and confusion." Of course, this is after the current corruption scandals that we've been seeing over the past few weeks seem to be coming from a specific tribe here in Kenya. And we saw yesterday most of these suspects were arraigned at the Milimani courts yesterday. Allow me to begin with Kabage, Mr. Kabage, just your thoughts on this aspect, the consequences of us as Kenyans politicizing this war on graft. What would be the consequences of that if we lost our true goal, our true vision of which is handling corruption and making it a tribal thing?
Well, I think we need to demystify the whole concept of linking corruption to a community. Corruption is perpetrated by individuals who happen to occupy public or private offices. And when they occupy those offices, first, they don't make application in the name of a community. They don't execute their crimes in the name of the community.
Right.
It's only in the advent of being discovered that all of a sudden they spring this defense that our community is under attack. But what you need to do is to unravel these individuals. Pick one of their properties that they own. In whose name is it? Is it in the name of Karanja Kabage and Taita community?
Right.
Is it in the name of Joe Jones, in the name of this and that? It's always in your name. In your bank account, in whose name is it? It is in your own personal name. When you write a check, do you call the community to write the check? When you are sending your kids to wherever you send them, whether holidays and what have you, do you buy tickets of every community, of your community, and they ride with you to those places? That never happens. So we must, as Right Honorable Prime Minister says, that individuals must carry their cross. But even more importantly is this: this nation cannot and will not progress as long as we always rally around our own. Now, rallying around our own is accepting guilt of a community. You cannot ascribe guilt or innocence to a community. It's individuals. Crimes, if you look at our penal code, we talk about an individual being charged for either commission of misdemeanor or felony. Crimes are never committed in the name of a community.
Right.
If I murder you, I will go and be charged as Karanja Kabage. Not even my family will be charged. If I today go and misuse and abuse an office, I never do that in the name of a community. If I go to school, when I get my grade, whether it's a D or an F or an A, I never get that grade in the name of our community. So we should stop the mischief that is today in currency, where individuals claim that their community is targeted.
Right.
In fact, we should treat it with the contempt it deserves. Because that's a fallacy.
Agwanda, let me rope you into the conversation, and he brings a very important point there. When you're writing checks, when you're the one getting a D, it is you as an individual, not the entire community. But that's a bad Kenyan habit that we have when it comes to now fighting war on crime, or the corruption. We now tend to make it a tribal thing instead of seeing the individual and the crimes that he or she has committed.
I'm happy that the former Prime Minister is talking about this very strongly, and I think he's on record that he's never supported any individual that has been found to be culpable in any act of corruption in this country.
Right.
And if anything, he's even disowned his own community members who at one point or another, remember former CEO of Kenya Pipeline, Shemo Chuodo, had issues, and you know, people said they were targeting the Luos at that particular time, and he said, carry your own cross. I think he's never sat on his word on this specific issue of corruption, and there I give him serious support as a nationalist. Secondly, as my panelists here, as my colleague panelists here said, there is absolutely no way how you can relate outright theft and looting of public coffer to a community. This money is not even invested in the specific homes of these individuals that were arrested. If you look at this money, a lot of it is either invested here in Nairobi or it is taken abroad and it's kept in some offshore account. The kind of money we're talking about here, billions of money, is not a money that you'll find in some community in Nandi.
You're right.
Where basically the Nandi, senator is making a lot of noise in and saying, hey, you know, our community is being targeted. If the majority of these people that have been arrested are perhaps coming from Rift Valley, as we've seen, then we need to ask ourselves one fundamental question: where was the ethic and integrity values when they were being hired? Was the person giving them jobs gave them the instruction to loot and to benefit from them, or were they acting under the instruction from an individual that perhaps is not known? That would be the only reason why we'll say our community is being targeted. If not, then everybody must carry their own cross.
Right.
Because how would you come out, and the senator, for your information, the senator of Nandi is the chairman of legal committee in parliament. If he's thinking that some people are not doing the right thing, he has the power and the authority vested on him by the laws to summon the DPP, to summon the DCI, and to answer on some of the things that he thinks they might not be doing correctly or rightfully. And for that reason, I really think that it is so baseless, it's so myopic. It is, you know, in disregard of our intellectual in this country, as professionals and as even citizens of this country, for one to would even think that he can sway us to think in the way he wants us to think, that a community is targeted. Some of his colleagues and his friends that have been talking about a community being targeted, and they're saying, oh, it's not even our community, the DP is also being targeted. I don't know if DP is part of this theft for him to be targeted. It's absolutely wrong to rope in somebody that has not been arrested, has not been charged in court in the name of a DP. The individuals are the ones answering the charges, and they are being taken to court, or they've been summoned to go to court. The DP's name is not there. Even if it was a 2022 politics, the kind of money that we are losing, it is not anything you want even to bring near a presidential contestant.
Exactly. Let me just take this conversation even further, because on page 4 and page 5, we go on to highlight some of the new twists that have developed. For example, now yesterday when the detectives were probing about 1.7 billion project cost variation, of which a Lebanese firm paid KPC 1 billion Kenyan shillings. But that's not what I want to bring to your attention, is that same Lebanese firm that goes by the name Zakim, by coincidence, also represents the Lebanon government as diplomats here in Nairobi. And Karanja, let me just get your thoughts on that aspect. The fact that now we have a crime scene here in terms of corruption being linked to another country, or in this case, an entire diplomat, a representative of another nation. What does that do to the relationship between Kenya and Lebanon? And in that case, where would Lebanon stand in this specific scenario in helping the Kenyan government fight corruption?
Well, first of all, we must always make a distinction between a corporate, both a corporate, and I think Zakem that you are referring to has been in this country for a very long time. It entered into, presumably, a contract with KPC, or Kenya Pipeline Company. And in that contract, there were performance requirements. And those performance requirements, I don't think they were anywhere touching on diplomatic immunities and privileges. So the issue of an individual who may be either owning or may be part of that company, it is neither here or there. What the case, and I have not interrogated the contract, so I cannot talk much about it. All I know, it would be unthinkable for Kenya Pipeline Company to bring in the issue of a company that is under immunities and privileges of diplomats under the Vienna Convention. So I'm not very sure that that really would be a defense in this particular respect. So we need to understand and interrogate more what is the issue of diplomat bringing in to do with this particular contract. So I wouldn't want to venture into making so many comments about it. All I know is that KPC is an independent legal entity, entered into a contract with Zakem, which is also an independent legal entity, and they each have capacity to be sued and to sue. That is the status. So how a diplomat is entering into this particular realm of crime, so to speak, alleged crime, let me put it that way, I am not very sure about it.
Right.
I don't see it.
All right, still on page 4, get this. When it comes to this oil farm boss that was charged with over about 2 billion scandal, the reason behind this is that as a nation, we're still quote to quote a new baby when it comes to the oil market. And the big debate around that, especially when we discovered oil, was whether oil is a curse or a blessing to this nation. We haven't even begun exporting oil yet. The scandals and already what's happening inside doesn't seem to be of good show. Gwanda, just your thoughts on that aspect, whether oil here in Kenya is going to be a blessing or a curse if we do not get things streamlined as early as now. Corruption charges already being brought about companies that deal with this.
Well, when you look at the oil that this country have, I think is a blessing. We are in a state where we have huge capital, investment on our engineers, our lawyers, and our laws as well. We also have very good businessmen in this country. We can get it right if we want, but that will entirely depend on our political interests in this. Whether the president and his team will want it to work well, we will live to see that. Now, if a lot of vested interest gets into it, then we'll start seeing the kind of things that we are seeing today. Like what we're talking about, the jetty in Kisumu, that has costed close to 2 billion, while in other countries it has costed maybe a third of that. In other words, it's been tripled in terms of the cost.
Right.
And even after being tripled, that jetty is still not ready to function. Yet we've built it so that we can leverage on other countries' transport system within the lake, but you realize that Uganda is yet to do theirs and Tanzania is yet to do theirs. And so this can only be profitable when you have Uganda and Tanzania with their jetties as well, because when their tanker ship comes to get oil, they need another place where they can empty that oil. And that will help Burundi and Rwanda and those landlocked countries basically will be depending hugely on the oil. We are thinking ahead of time, but you can see the greed in this country, the greediness of our CEOs and people that are involved in this huge parastatal. They look at an opportunity, seize it, and pay the money very, very quickly. When we're looking at what is happening in Zakem, for example, I mean, this is a company that has been operating in this country for the last 30 years or more. But again, when we look at adjustment, the financial increase from about 48 to close to 60 of over 18 billion, just adjustment alone, then you're asking yourself, what does the law provide on issues of adjustment and variation for that reason? Does it provide close to about 50%? Absolutely not. Variation, maybe about 10 to 20, that is what allowed. But when you look at another 18 billion of variation, but not just variation based on equipment and stuff like that, on time wasted. Man, people are killing in big monies in this country. A 15 billion given to somebody and just, you delayed my time and for that reason you have to pay for it. And you can see that it was back and forth agreement, disagreement between these two parties. And ultimately it will end up in court. But what we are seeing in Kenya Pipeline is the kind of corruption that you cannot even imagine of. And it is from one director to the other. The question is, are these people that are being employed as CEOs and board members of these directors there to siphon money on behalf of somebody? And I think that's what it is. Because in your legal mind, in your ability to understand things and to become a CEO of an entity or an organization, you should be able to question.
Right.
You should be able to benchmark. You should be able to say, this is what it costs, and why are you charging me 5 times? Now, if you can't do that, then you are definitely working on behalf of somebody. And I think they are doing that.
All right, Mr. Kabage, I just want your thoughts on this. The accused person's lawyer, Tom Ojenda and Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, say the termed charges were generic and had no consequences with this specific economic crime. Just help Kenyans understand what that means.
Well, again, without having access to the documents, as a lawyer, I would be very cautious in making statements that are not supported. But one issue that may be lost in this conversation is there was a report yesterday where the CS Treasury had said that he was concerned about the capacity of the Kenya Pipeline to absorb 61 billion shillings. Now, that is a very key issue that needs to be interrogated. But I want to be very, very cautious in commenting about my professional colleagues, Ahmed Nasir and Professor Ojenda, because I have not been seized of the facts of the case as it is. And, one of the dangers of making assertions or comments about a thing as complex and as involving as the one you are referring to is what is written in the press is usually a highlight. But there are backgrounds to some of these cases.
Right.
And I would want to interrogate it much more deeply before I can come up with a much more informed way of explaining it.
All right. But Mr. Kabage, if there's one thing that has also caught my attention, and because you're the legal mind on this panel, just help us understand. On the Daily Nation, they're running big with this still issue of graft. NHIF suspects flies choppers to avoid traffic. So we've seen the big story behind it, that one of the people who was a secretary bought about 8 houses for about 160 million Kenyan shillings. But the interesting part is that as patients die all over the country, friends paint a shocking picture of the millionaire lifestyle of junior staff at public health insurer.
Okay.
My big question here, Mr. Kabage, as we close off press review, is the integrity of lawyers.
Yes.
Why would lawyers and the legal body in itself, as a country, we're trying to fight corruption, why would lawyers go ahead and defend certain individuals, these individuals?
You know, when we are being admitted to the bar by the Chief Justice, we swear. And what we say is that we shall defend anybody without fear or favor. Now, as a lawyer, you get cases coming to you. And we are faithful to the oath that we took. We don't know whether the person who is being charged is guilty or not. That is for the prosecution to adduce sufficient evidence that will convince the judge that truly and sincerely this person is guilty. But we must defend the person. That is most important. I cannot partake in knowing, in ascribing to you whether you are guilty or not until the evidence is proven. And the only person that can pronounce your guilt or innocence is a judge. But aside from that, let me make a comment which is really important. I did a study to which let me put it this, I did a thesis And the subject of the thesis was the interface between foreign direct investment and corruption in Kenya. That was 2005, all right? And what did I do? I went back to 1970 during the Degwa Commission of Inquiry that allowed the public servants to become involved in business. And I looked at the catalog of all public investment committee reports, all public accounts committee reports. I looked at Auditor General's report. That document is at the University of Nairobi Law School. In that study that I did, one thing that was very, very clear and which is present today, because people do not get charged and get convicted, we have developed a culture of what you can call impunity. So the greatest challenge in this country today for criminals or alleged criminals is because we don't convict people, therefore we don't make people suffer the consequences of that. Fast forward, in 2010 we passed a constitution. Article 40 of the constitution talks about protection of rights to properties. However, sub-article 6 says very clearly that this article does not protect anybody who may have unlawfully acquired property. And I want to refer to Kenyans too, if I may finish with this, to a commission of inquiry read by Ndungu Commission, a legal mind, a lawyer called Paul Ndungu, of 2004. In that report, he has provided a catalog of properties belonging to the public, whether schools or institutions like ADC or AFC or public properties that were acquired illegally by individuals. And the Constitution of 2010 says that you are not going to be protected under that article. So what I would say to the government today, if the government is interested in dealing with the corruption, there are evidences that are documented that provides for the government to take action. And in this case, the one you're referring to as far as NHIF is concerned, and many others that are going to come out. We also have NYS, we also have KPC, we have many others. What is the challenge we have today is this. We have the Director of Public Prosecution. We have the DCI. My challenge to them is make sure you do thorough, complete, and watertight investigations and charges when people go to court. And I can assure you, if we start convicting people, if you convict 10 people only in this country,
it will send a strong message.
Let me tell you, you will do away with the corruption in this country completely. And it does not matter the status of the individual that is being convicted. It's that you have committed a crime. Above all, your property should be seized, because the Constitution clearly states that there is no protection of property of any individual under Article 40, sub-article 6, if you have acquired property illegally.
All right, that's a fantastic note to leave press review. A reason for you to grab the daily papers this morning, the Daily Nation as well as the Standard. Details of what we're discussing is right there. That's Karaja Kabage. He is an advocate of the High Court. Michael Agwanda, governance expert. Michael Gitonga will be coming back with them as they dive into the next part of the segment, which, by the way, we are asking you whether you think the deal between President Uhuru Kenyatta and that of Raila Odinga will cement or address historical injustices ahead of Thursday's visit in Nyanza. Let's take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with that conversation.